Welcome everyone. Good afternoon. How is everybody doing? We are now in day 42 of MCO. Have you washed your hand today? Do you know that we are actually having so much of privilege to enjoy washing our hand because not everyone are able to enjoy clean water. So without further ado, I would like to invite today's speakers or our guest of honor, Prof Chan, to actually share with us about water. And also today's topic will be, is Penang ready for a water crisis? Prof Chan.
Hi, Hui Ching. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Very good.
So Prof Chan, would you like to actually share with us about Water Watch Penang? And also, how do you get yourself involved in this?
Okay, Water Watch Penang is an NGO which was formed in 1997. Those days, I think a lot of people got together. Many of these are retired people, people from industry, government officials, NGO workers, and so on. We all decided that there were some issues in Penang, and we, got together. I think there were maybe about 100 people, and we identified water being one of the serious problems that Penang was facing. And then during that meeting, it was called a People's Forum. We formed a Water Watch Penang, and the pro tem committee was formed then, and I was elected the first president. And so on and off, I was president until now. So we have been registered for more than 20 years already. And the main objective of Water Watch Penang is actually to educate people, to make them understand, more aware of the importance of water. Even though we get water very cheaply in Malaysia, especially in Penang, and we don't really have any trouble with water, but that's not to mean that we should take it for granted. People who have been outside of Malaysia, they should know. Many other countries don't get water supply for 24 hours a day, and many people actually don't have treated water, and many people are forced to use untreated water and so on. So we are trying to educate people, and so our view has always been we should, despite we are being rich in water resources. I mean, I'm speaking about Malaysia as a whole, although Penang is not. We should be very careful with what we are using. We should not waste water, and we are trying to get to change basically a water wasting society, which we are now, to a water saving society. I'm not saying that we should not use water. We should use water wisely so that we don't waste anything. So education is one of our important objectives, to educate people. Of course, we do many other things as well.
Okay, so Prof, you mentioned about the idea of changing from water wasting to water saving society. I think that is some sort of like very inspiring, and we definitely should move towards that. Prof, you also mentioned about like probably we should ensure the water security. So knowing that Malaysia is blessed with abundance of water, and it's about like 2,500 to 3,000 millimeter of rainfall every year. But the fact is, some of the states in Malaysia actually experience flood, while the rest are having prolonged drought. For instance, Penang itself, right? Since January, PBA have actually alarmed us for the fourth time, saying that our dam capacity is extremely low, and of course, the high level demand due to COVID-19. So in your opinion, Prof, is water considered a very scarce resources in Penang? And are we able to self-sustain?
Okay, it's not an easy question to answer, but Penang is one of the very small states in Malaysia, but we are also one of the most developed. Developed meaning that most of our area, forested areas, have been cleared for either industries, housing, and so on. So our water resources actually very limited. The amount of land that we have retained for water catchment is actually about only 7%, which means 93% already cleared and being developed. On top of that, we are over-dependent on one major source of water supply, which is the Sungai Muda. And as we know, Sungai Muda is not from Penang. It has its origins, from Kedah, but it flows into Penang. And when it flows into Penang, we take water from there. But the problem is we are at the downstream, which means just before the river enters the sea, we are drawing the water. So when the water is at the downstream, it is very polluted, because as the river flows along, the paddy areas, the agriculture areas, the flows across cities and towns and so on, it gets polluted. So downstream is actually very polluted. So and also we are drawing, I think, about 80% of the Penang's water supply from this river. This is over dependent, and we know that it is not good to rely 100% or 80% on one source of water. Our own dams only supply about 20%. So I think it is very important for Penang, being a water stressed state, to look for alternative means of water. There are many other alternative sources, like desalination. We can have, getting water from other states like Perak, and of course, getting people to reduce their demand. Not just people, but other water consumers like hotels, factories, and so on. And implementing water saving devices also is important, so that we don't waste the water. So in a nutshell, I think Penang is a water stressed state. We don't have enough water. We rely on only one major source of water. We have very few water catchments. And on top of that, our water is the cheapest in the country, and Penangites use the most water. I think Malaysia, the average Malaysian uses only about 210, I think. Singaporean is about 150. In India, maybe it's only 100. In Africa, maybe it's only 50. But Penangites use, I think last year, it was about nearly 278 liters per person per day, which is double what the Singaporeans are using. And it is way too much, mainly because I think our water tariffs are too cheap.
Okay.
Yesterday,
so, Prof, you mentioned...
I want to stress on this point. Yesterday, I looked at the dams, and the levels are very low. Aitam Dam is only 33% of its capacity. Teluk Bahang is 20%. Mengkuang Dam is 67%. But we don't use Mengkuang Dam. We are using Mengkuang Dam's water as a final resource during emergency. Muda Dam in Kedah is the worst. It's only 5.4% of its total capacity. Imagine how dry it is now. If the Muda Dam is like this, I think the water flowing in the Muda River is very, very low, and we will not be able to draw enough water for our supply. So this is a very precarious problem that we are facing now.
Thank you, Prof, for sharing the current situation of our different dams that supply water to Penang itself. So you actually mentioned quite a number of times saying that Penang is a water stress state, right? Here is the tricky question, because I believe many of us from the public was wondering, Penang, since we have so many water dams and also is surrounded by the sea, why are we still having water shortage? Prof?
Surrounded by the seas is a very good question. Water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. We can't drink salted water, unless we have desalination plants like Singapore or Saudi Arabia. But desalination plants are very expensive. It's not that we don't have the technology. We have the technology, we can do it. But you have to, build a factory for desalination. And of course, the question here is cost. Desalination typically costs about 10 times more than what we are paying now for treating water from the rivers. Most of our water supply is from rivers, and it's easy to just abstract water, pump the water from the river. You don't really need to do anything. You just put the pump in and you pump it out. And then you treat the water at the treatment plant, and then you pipe it out to the people, to the consumers. So this is the cheapest form of getting water and treating them and sending it out. But if you have a desalination plant, you're talking about increasing costing of electricity, pumping, and so on and so forth. So are we willing to pay 10 times more for the water compared to what we are paying now? So, this is the big question. I think desalination would not be a good solution at this moment. Maybe in future, when we have no other choices, desalination would surely be one of the alternatives, but not at the moment. It's certainly too expensive.
If that's the case, Prof, in your opinion, how ready is Penang if we are going to have prolonged water shortage? I mean, like if we have a longer period of drought, how ready is Penang to face this kind of situation?
It is a very precarious problem. I think touch and go, I would say. I really can't promise or tell you how long we can last, but I think the PBA, which is a water service provider in Penang, has already sent out 4 this year, 4 water alert. As long as I've lived in Penang, I've come to Penang in the 80s, I have never ever experienced 4 water alerts, at the most 1 or 2, So this is the first time we had 4 water alerts, and the main reason is because the dam levels are so low and the rains didn't come. Now, typically in Penang, the weather from November to December is wet. So usually all our dams will be filled up to its 100% capacity during November, December, the northeast monsoon season. But this year, the dams didn't fill up to 100%. I think it was maybe about 50-60% only. So the dams didn't fill up, and then the dry season came. January, February, March is typically our dry season. So very dry this year, prolonged dry period, and we expect the rains actually to come in April, usually in the first week or second week. But this year, only the 3rd week, we just experienced the rain just a few days ago, and has been raining. So, we are very happy that the rains came, but these rains have to be sustained, until the end of the month, if not following into May. If the rains just stop like that after a few days, I think our dams will not fill up. Even now, after a few days rain, it is still very low, the dam levels. So I think we have a very serious problem here. Maybe at this rate, we can last maybe another couple of more months, maybe maximum 3 months. If the rains don't come, we will have problems.
All right.
3 months, I would give it maximum.
Okay, so everyone should be getting ready for the prolonged drought if, let's say, the rain is still not falling.
I didn't answer your question just now. You said, how ready are we? I think in terms of the water service provider, we have one of the best, in the whole country. We are ready. We have all the infrastructure, all the treatment facilities, and so on and so forth. No problem. But the problem is, if there is no rain, there's no water. And when there's no water, it's useless to have the best, there's no water to treat, no water to treat, no water to pump out, no water to distribute out. So, which is a serious problem. So what we are doing now, actually, we are asking the federal government and meteorological department to cloud seeding. We are begging them to do cloud seeding to make sure the rains are sustained. Otherwise, we will have problem. But having said that, consumers are not ready. We are not ready. We are not taking steps. People are not ready by investing in rainfall harvesting unit or make a well. Those people with landed property, they can dig a well, use it as just for washing and so on. Certainly not for drinking. But people are not prepared to do that, and people are also not putting in measures like water saving devices and so on. Generally, I think the consumers in Penang, I think we are not ready.
Okay, so Prof, you touched about the water supply side, meaning to say that we need to identify new water sources, and also we talk about the demand side on water wastage, and you did mention that Penang might not be ready to have all the water saving devices. So speaking of that, do you think that the cheapest water tariff, Penang enjoy the cheapest water tariff, is the main reason people are actually wasting their water? And if the answer is yes, what is the best solutions that you can actually recommend for our water authority?
For definitely, I think when something is cheap, I mean, human beings are rational human beings. So when something is very cheap, easy to get, and it's not a problem to them, I think people don't pay attention. This is the case with water. So enjoying such cheap water, I think it's only about 22 cents per cubic meter for the first 20 cubic meters. The bill per household typically is only 5 to 10 ringgit, per 2 months, is Penang only issue the bill every 2 months. So divide by 2, if you are paying 10 ringgit, you're actually 5 ringgit per month. Yeah, like what I'm paying is 5 ringgit per month. So people are not aware of, pay too much attention to this saving water and so on. But they will save in terms of electricity, which is expensive now. Petrol has come down, but they also save petrol, the food bill and telephone bills and so on. All these things they will save because it's expensive. But water, they won't pay attention. So I think there's a very good relation or correlation between the price of water and the way we use water. If we were to increase the rate, I think it would make a difference. At the moment, the government is heavily subsidizing the domestic water rates by cross-subsidizing from industry. We charge industry more, like hotels, business, and factories, and we cross-subsidy to the domestic people. But I think...
So would you recommend water authority to do something?
Yeah, I think we should restructure. I mean, government is now not rich. I wouldn't say they have a lot of money. I think they don't have enough money, so they should not be subsidizing. Electricity has been taken off, no more subsidies. Petrol also no more subsidies. I think water should be the next one. It's not going to deprive people of any water because the water is so cheap. Even if you charge at cost, at the moment the cost of treating water in Penang maybe is about 1 ringgit 30 cent so per cubic meter. So we charge at cost. I think it's reasonable because the water supply, provider is not making money. It's just charging at cost, So I think that should be okay. But some poor people may not be able to afford it. So what we are suggesting is at the first 20 cubic meter, maybe the price should stay the same at 22 cents per cubic meter. But once you go above 20 cubic meter, from 21 to 30 cubic meter, then we charge you at cost. And the more you use, the more you are going to be charged, which means we penalize only the water waster, not those people who use within the first 20 cubic meter. I think that should be a very fair thing to do.
So, Prof, if all these measures that you recommended just now is not being done immediately, what could be the possible threat in terms of water shortage issues?
Okay, if we don't increase the water tariff,
yes. What could be the possible threat?
Time to increase the tariff. How can we address this? I think the important thing to do now, because we are in a drought, we can't increase the water tariffs immediately. It takes a lot of negotiation and so on. People can start taking action by reducing their demands. They can start to save water, use water wisely, and do not stress the system. And also, I think if no action is taken in the future, you're asking me what will happen. That's the likely scenario. If Penangites would continue to use water like this without reducing them, stressing the system, and then the rains don't come, there's not enough water. So it's likely that we're going to have water rationing. Although I think the motto in Penang is no water rationing, but when there is not enough water, there is no choice. Okay. The other scenario is our water pressure in the pipes will be very low. We will not enjoy, good water pressure because there is not enough water, and there would be very, very negative effects on our industry. Like MCO now, everything is stopped. When the factory don't have water, it will stop. When hotels don't have water, nobody is going to come. When people don't have water, they cannot carry out their daily, things. So everybody will suffer without enough water.
All right, thank you, Prof. So
Yes.
I believe that some of the area in Penang already experience some of the threats that you mentioned. For example, low water pressure at certain areas like Kampung Paya Terubong or Kertak Sangor area. So I guess no one wants to see water rationing in Penang. Apart from water quality, quantity issues, I think we also facing water quality deterioration recently in Penang and also nationwide. So, Prof, in your opinion, what is the cause of water pollution? Would you mind to share a few examples of water pollution in Penang?
The easiest way to look at it is this way. Let's say our main sources of water, the Sungai Muda, is polluted and we can't use the water. And I'm not just saying this to frighten people, because there have been some cases where rivers in Selangor and so on, the treatment plants had to stop treatment because of pollution. So if the Sungai Muda were to be polluted to the extent that we cannot use that water, so we just look at the cost of the water itself. The PBA for 1 year, I think their cost, the total cost in their revenue is about 361.91 million. 361.91 million was their total gross revenue from the water, just treating water and supplying it out. So without this water, you pollute the whole Sungai Muda. This is the minimum cost you would have to pay, is the cost of this treating this water, and you can't treat this water and you can't send out 361.91 million, which was their total revenue for 2019. But I haven't factored in other costs like, what's going to happen to the factories, to the hotels, to other businesses and so on. So water pollution is a very, very serious problem. I think in order to calculate the actual cost, you have to work backwards, looking at, what's cost to the factories, to the hotels, to the people, and to the business and so on. It's a very, very serious problem. Just the water alone is already 300 over million.
Yeah, we can see that that is really a massive environmental cost, since our drinking water are mainly from our Malaysian rivers, right? So, speaking on drinking water, so Prof, would you like to share with us who is the authority that in charge of our drinking water in Penang? And yeah, a tricky question: is it safe for us to drink from the tap?
Okay, my own very honest opinion is, if the water is at the treatment plant after it's treated and it is being sent out, and you drink the water at the point of the treatment plant, it is 100% safe, because the water service provider is checking it every hour, okay, for the treated water. And also on top of that, before it's being sent out, it has to get the approval of the Ministry of Health. So there are two checking here, one by the water service provider themselves, and the other one is by the Ministry of Health. So at the treatment plant, it's no problem. Now, the problem is many of our pipes are very old. And I'm not just talking about the pipes, the general main pipes of the service provider, but also the pipes in our house. Like me, in my house, I bought secondhand, and it was already 20 years when I bought this house. When I moved in, I couldn't use the pipe in this house because they were made of cast iron. It's all rusted, and it's very, very unsafe. Everything gets into the water. So I have to change all the piping system in order not to suffer this problem. So I have to put in water filter and so on. So if you live in a house that is having old pipes, and also you are far away and your area has very old pipes, then your water may not be safe to be drunk from the pipe. So please, you can check. You can ask, you can get some water sample and send it to a lab to be checked, or you can ask your water service provider and so on. So, but at the treatment plant, it's 100% safe.
Okay, thank you, Prof, for answering these questions.